Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Michelle Gladieux, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
It's a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about your recent book, Communicate with Courage, Taking Risks to Overcome the Four Hidden Challenge. I'm super excited to talk with you. And we were talking in the pre-interview just about both of our loves for organizational change and organizational leadership. We're both professors and do change management work. And it's just a love and a passion that we both have. We both also, I was mentioning how I've traveled out to Fort Wayne, which I guess was a bit of a surprise to you. Maybe a lot of people don't go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, but we both have taught at Indiana Tech. And that was the reason why I've been out to Fort Wayne. It's really a fun thing, a fun connection that we have. And I'm just thrilled to be able to have this chance to chat with you about this book, because I think courage as a leadership trait is something that I feel very strongly about. And communicating with courage is something that I think we need more people willing to do. I think of all the great leaders, and I think whether you're thinking about kind of the classic charismatic type of leader, all the way down to the kind of the quiet, confident, calm type of leader, they all have courage to enact change. And so we're going to unpack this and discuss all of this together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Michelle's bio with everybody. Michelle Gladieux is the author of Communicate with Courage and president of Gladieux Consulting, a Midwest-based team known for top-notch design and presentation of seminars and communication and leadership topics around the U.S. She provides executive coaching and facilitates strategic planning for clients in diverse industries and governments, at nonprofits, and in academia. She has 18 years of collegiate teaching experience at 3 universities in her home state of Indiana, accepting her first adjunct faculty position at the age of 23. Her students, whether in introductory public speaking or graduate level organizational psychology courses, benefit from her deep commitment to helping others grow as communicators. She's worked as a corporate human resources and training director in the cold storage, robotics, and construction industries, and enjoys visiting conferences as a keynote speaker and workshop presenter. I could go on. There's just a lot of really great stuff in your background. But is there anything you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
Sure. I would just like to tell our listeners how blessed I feel to get to do what I love every day. And I'm really glad that I decided to kind of take the road less traveled and make up my own job. After working as a human resources and training director for several years, I thought in 2004, I'm going to give this consulting idea a try, because I was really attracted to the idea of working with different teams in different industries. And now my team and I do get to work with sometimes up to a couple hundred different teams per year. So I guess what the last 25 years have taught me are some of the things that are absolutely vital in a recipe for great communication or in a recipe for great teamwork. And that's what this book, I really wanted to write the book so that I could help people with the more time-consuming, difficult kinds of communication issues we find ourselves in. And maybe we could approach those with a little more skill and bravery and joy. Life can be better.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I agree. We we get so bogged down oftentimes in the daily grind of work of careers and of life, that I think oftentimes we forget to slow down and to smell the roses, so to speak. I love that you were willing to have the courage to try something different. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone needs to do that.
No.
People can stay with their corporate jobs and those sorts of careers. But the fact that that was a conscious choice that you made, that was something that you felt was right for you, and that you had the courage to take that leap and to move forward into the unknown. I think that's a powerful lesson. That and you found success, and I'm sure it wasn't without struggle. I'm sure it wasn't without, ups and downs. But ultimately, it has paid off, and it's probably provided you with a whole bunch of lessons along the way. And that's a lot of fun. That's exciting. And I agree that, um, working with diverse teams and working with all sorts of different types of organizations, it's a lot of fun. It's exciting to try to help organizations and teams and leaders just be better, get better, and be more effective and impact the world in better ways. That's what gets me up in the morning too.
Amen. In the last 20 years, certainly haven't been without their share of struggles. You mentioned success, but I would say I'm still hustling. I'm still in the struggle daily as far as learning about my own weaknesses. I've certainly learned a lot about them by teaching communication every day. And that self awareness is serving me, but it makes me even more convinced that this idea of mastering interpersonal communication, I don't think we do it in one lifetime. I think by the
Mm.
end of this lifetime, there's still many, many things for each of us to work on. But if we can find some joy and strength and that persistence not to give up and to own our mistakes, apologize for them, admit our weaknesses, and take baby steps daily towards our vision of our best potential as a communicator, I think that might be the meaning of life. Or at least
Mm.
I think that's the meaning of life to me. And yes, to get to stand beside people who are coming into their own and understanding how to use power ethically and effectively and understand how personalities differ and all of the good things we teach, like business writing and presentation skills and conflict management. It's the stuff of life. And no matter where you work, you need organizational leadership and communication skills.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely do. Everyone needs it, regardless. Um, Absolutely right. Well, let's go ahead and dive on in, to talk about your book. As we do so, I always like to ask authors why this book, why now? Because books are a labor of love, and there are a lot of books out there, right? There, especially in the
Sure.
leadership world. There are so many books, and I have to admit, like I've added to the pile myself, and it's something that I feel passionate about too, so I've added to the pile of books myself. What was it about this topic, and why this book, why now for you?
Well, it's taken me a long time, and thousands of companies and clients served to learn the lessons that I put in the book. So I was eager to reach an audience beyond my usual 30 people or 100 people or 300 people that might show up for a half day training event or a lunch and learn or a corporate retreat or a nonprofit retreat. I wanted to make sure that others had access to the information that there are a lot of challenges out there that we could do something about if they just could come out of peripheral vision and into our immediate eyesight. And so those four hidden challenges, as I see them, are: we hide from risk and we define to be right, we rationalize the negative, and we settle for good enough. And it's very human to do those four things, but I hadn't seen any books, articles, anything like that that really named these four hidden challenges and then taught people in 150 pages or less how to get past them for benefit in personal and professional life. So I wanted to step up and take a shot at it. And I wrote for about 5 years
Hmm.
before I completed the manuscript and was lucky enough to have Barrett Kaler in Oakland, California be interested in the book. And that, of course, brought Penguin Random House to the table as the distributor. And I'll tell you, working with those professional editors definitely made me a better writer and helped me solidify these points, clarify them, so anyone in any station or age in life could benefit from understanding the hidden challenges. So it felt like time, and it felt like I had had a couple decades of experience, and I want to teach pro moves. And pro moves are basically small things that our listeners can do that the average bear sort of walks on by and misses. And it might be in message sending or it might be in message receiving, but there are ways to just polish the interaction that would be helpful and happy, make your life happy when you begin to enact some of these pro moves.
Getting that book out there, it's a long time coming for a lot of people. And so kudos to you for the labor of love and for getting your work out there to the world. And
And to
I
you,
encourage.
John.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And I encourage the audience to check it out. We're going to talk about it today, but what we're going to get to is really going to only scratch the surface. So that's one of the things about a book. It's wonderful that when we can only scratch the surface in a conversation, that you can always go get the book and you can read it and you can just really devour it and take the time to really consume it and to understand it. So I encourage the audience to check it out. All right, as we dive in, um, let's first talk about the main title, Communicate with Courage, and then I want to dig into those four hidden challenges. So why do you talk about communicating with courage? Why is courage so important there?
Well, it's so important because we have to supply it for ourselves. We can have guides and mentors and teachers and friends and family members who stand by us along the way. But ultimately, whether you choose to say I love you, or you choose to say I'm sorry, or you choose to listen when you would prefer to interrupt, you speak up in the meeting, you stick up for somebody who's not there, you stick up for yourself, or you make your desires known, you negotiate. All of these things that are part of the very important couple thousand decisions we make per day, we have to summon this quality of courage. It's vital and it comes from within ourselves. So it's intangible and nobody else can bring it forth other than ourselves. So I believe it's worth the effort. And I wanted to kind of provide a bravery manual so folks
Mm,
would see from waking to sleeping, there are several occasions where many people just decide to take a pass or to go for C plus effort when a little extra effort could bring about a much better outcome. So I guess I would sum it up by saying there's often so much more we can do to improve situations in our personal and professional life than we realize. And I wanted the book to be sort of a wake up call. Wake up and look around you. Stop wishing that your relationship was better. Stop wishing that you had a better interaction with your boss. Stop wishing that your employees cared more about the goals and start taking steps in the way that you hone and strategize about your messaging so that you can actually be on the receiving end of some of those actions you hope others will take.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I can't control what other people do, right?
That's
I
right.
can try to
50%,
Yeah,
50%
I
of the
can try to
skill.
influence, I can try to persuade, and that's all I can control. And so like you said, I can hone my message, I can hone the communications tactics and techniques. Um, I can do that. That I can control, but ultimately, I can't control what other people do, what choices other people make. But I do control also the courage by which I show up to the world, and whether or not I'm willing to, like you said, stand up for people, speak out when I see injustice, uh, challenge or push back against whatever issue might arise that needs to be pushed back on, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things that ultimately I do have a choice, and I do have the ability to respond to, and so that is where courage comes in, and that's where it's so important and so powerful, and I think people respond to it. You know, I'm thinking of an example recently where I saw an organization where there's a lot of I came in, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of concern. We often talk about like psychological safety. This organization did not have it. So, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear of retribution. So people didn't want to speak out. They felt like they would be targeted.
Mhm.
And it took one courageous person who was willing to kind of step forward and be the first one. And once they were willing to step forward and articulate what they were feeling, which was very similar to what other people were feeling, then it kind of gave a permission structure and it gave voice to others to then step forward and to be able to express. And then they had shared voice together. And, that's the kind of dynamic that oftentimes we see in organizations, in teams, especially if there's a toxic culture. And so we can't undervalue like or speak uh, small enough about the importance of that courage in how we move forward in the world, because it can make a huge difference, especially for those who may feel otherwise unempowered to speak up for themselves.
And then we need top management who largely sets the culture to show the courage to admit that there have been mistakes made in the
Yeah,
culture building and to be willing to do what it takes to hear employees and to start to make changes if they want to retain high performers. As an executive coach, that's a lot of my work is coaching people to be willing to accept constructive feedback and constructive criticism. And I don't think any of us like it, but to the extent that we can take that medicine, we really do get better.
so with a foundation of courage, then we move into the four hidden challenges that we have to try to overcome. Let's walk
Mhm.
through those.
Hiding from risk is about being afraid that someone will see that we're not perfect and that we have weaknesses, real or supposed. So I do a lot of coaching work with folks who carry around negative self-talk that's not true anymore or was never true. So
Yeah.
first we have to determine what are we exactly trying to pull over on people, and why are we afraid to be imperfect when that is the very nature of humanity? And
Yeah,
once,
exactly.
yeah, so I help people get clear on their values through the book, and I ask them to then decide to engage as a listener or as a speaker when it comes to their values. So sometimes being courageous, I just want to underline this point, isn't being the one who speaks up. It might be the one who lets someone else speak first.
Yeah.
So we can think about what we lose when we decide not to get in the game as a communicator, when we are not listening well, or when we're not using our voice to participate, and we realize that we're really missing an opportunity to make our mark in the world in a positive way. So there are a few chapters that help people through that. The second hidden challenge I write about is called defining to be right. And that's when you're just so damn sure that no one can tell you otherwise. And you're not even interested in other perspectives. And I would like to say, this is me sometimes. I think this is all of us sometimes. And it's absolutely
Absolutely.
okay to be struggling with all four of the challenges. I recommend people read the book or listen to the book and then choose one to work on this year and begin to bring that challenge forward so that you can move past the obstacle. One is enough. If you choose defining to be right, then you're going to stop being so quick to judge. And you might just attend a family gathering or a work meeting with a real sincere desire to understand how others perceive the situation, realizing that they've had a completely different life and see things through different eyes than you do. And then we can celebrate when we have the guts to accept the fact that we were wrong or that we had a limited view. Um, let's see. So I would ask people to summon the courage to test their assumptions rather than continuing to rely on them. And a lot of the bias that we all carry has come down through generations and has to do with a limited perspective of the world. So just knowing that there are about 8 billion other perspectives out there should help folks open their mind, but it can feel scary to listen to someone else's value system when it is different than your own. But that's what leaders do. That's what great parents do. That's what people in loving relationships do. They hold some space so that the other person doesn't have to agree with them all the time. The third hidden challenge I write about is called rationalizing the negative. And it's basically an invitation to folks who are maybe more pessimistic in their thinking to take a look at some of the benefits of the courage of optimism. And it does take courage
Mm.
to visualize a positive outcome and then try for it. So defining to be right, rationalizing the negative, they're related. Rationalizing the negative involves folks taking a chance to either listen fully when they disagree, or some encouraged to do the scary thing, like face a conflict and say, John, there's some weirdness between us. I'm not sure what's going on. I just wanted to bring it up. Is there something I've done? So that we don't get walls around empires in workplaces and we have
Mhm.
better teamwork happening. And that's the third hidden challenge, rationalizing the negative. I ask people to have the courage to put some faith into positive outcomes. If you are rationalizing the negative, your thoughts might sound something like this: she's never going to listen. He's not going to care. they're never going to change. And it's just kind of on repeat. And when we tell ourselves those things enough, we just throw our hands up and say, so I'm not going to try with my communication. Something that comes to mind is coaching employees. I watch employers try to coach employees to be more effective, to have better attitudes, as demonstrated behaviorally. And sometimes they say, I just don't think it's worth even trying. I don't think this person's ever going to change. And to that, I say, haven't you ever had a bad habit or something about you that you were doing and you had to hear it maybe 20 or 30 times or from 10 or 12 different people before finally you were like, well, I guess I have to look at this. So even though
Hmm.
your voice or your interaction might not create the change you hope to see, at least you're part of a positive effort. And we're so lucky to be on the wake up list every day, and life is so short. I believe strongly that it's helped me a lot to lose dear family members. I lost a lot of family when I was around 19 years old. And I think ever since then, I wake up thinking, how can I make a positive mark in this world? What values do I believe in that I want to have as part of my legacy? And then how do I do that as a communicator? So rationalizing the negative, watch your self-talk if you want to eliminate rationalizing the negative. And remember that sometimes highly cognitive, highly rational personalities are more risk averse, or maybe folks who have been hurt or burned in communication in the past, they can fall prey to pessimistic mindsets pretty easily. It's a strong choice to say, I will believe that some positive may come. And then the fourth hidden challenge you asked about is settling for good enough, and that would be satisficing. That's just sizing up what's needed in the communication and just doing enough to scoot by. I've heard it described as flying low. And rather than flying low all the time, I believe there ought to be sometimes throughout, let's say, the day, back to if you make a couple thousand decisions during the day, how about making sure that a few of those decisions have to do with offering a piece of praise that might really make a difference, offering a suggestion, offering someone with less power than you the opportunity to be in the spotlight or to try to solve the problem their way. There are a million and one ways to use pro moves as communicators to overcome these four hidden challenges. And I've tried to stuff it's a short book, but I've tried to stuff the book with those ideas. And then the cool thing is, once you get in the once you get in the habit of seeing yourself as a difference maker, as a communicator, and you start to use courage, it's like a muscle. It gets
Yeah,
strengthened
yeah.
with use, and then people are making up their pro moves all over the place, and they don't need me to name them or to describe them. But I think readers will enjoy at the end of each chapter. I've listed just highlighted one pro move, and then one exercise that the reader could undertake same day. And it's almost like working with an executive coach one on one, but through the medium of a book.
I love that. And I love the applied nature of it. The ability to not just think conceptually about the ideas, but to actually really work through it. And like you mentioned, you don't want to try to tackle everything all at once. I mean, these are hard things because it's been ingrained in us throughout a lifetime of experience, in
Mm-hmm.
a lifetime of interactions. And so we have these mental models and we have these ways of interacting with other people. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for me to shift the way I view interactions and the way I communicate. So picking one of these hidden challenges and focusing on it
Mm-hmm.
and just building that muscle over time, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
that's and just trying to be just a little bit better, like 5% better,
Yes,
that's going to be
exactly.
powerful. The cumulative, impact of that over time, it'll be remarkable. You can look back and see, oh my gosh, I cannot believe where I was versus where I am today. And then you can move on to the next one. And I like the coaching aspect of like how you've set up the book as well.
And
I also just wanted to say, like you were talking about just a minute ago, we all need to have enough intellectual humility to recognize that that not only can we be wrong, certainly that's possible, because we're all finite in our understanding, because we're human, et cetera, et cetera. But oftentimes it doesn't even matter who's right or wrong, right? it's not a question of right or wrong. It's a question of understanding. It's a question of communication. And so it doesn't like I'm thinking about like me and my wife. If we're having an argument or about something, usually it has nothing to do with who's right or wrong. It just has to do with are we actually able to like listen to each other and respect each other in the communication and you know and really understand where each other's coming from. And you know, like you said, we often, whether it's in a marital relationship or like a family, other sorts of family relationships where we have years and years and years of baggage, oftentimes a long-term, workplace relationship where maybe you had negative interactions, and so you become, yeah, you're skeptical, or you put up walls and barriers really quickly. Like that's the kind of stuff that that it's not, again, it's not a question of whether you're right or wrong. Oftentimes it's just a question of can you step back to try to view things from their point of view to better understand where they're coming from, um, so that you can communicate more effectively. That's what
And
it comes down to.
that's emotional intelligence. That's a
Yeah.
great definition right there. Operational definition of emotional intelligence is being able to assess how am I feeling, and then use that emotion in a productive way rather than a damaging way, or even perhaps to postpone dealing with that emotion
Mm.
until you can appropriately do so. One thing I think that our listeners could do if they wanted to take some baby steps towards becoming a great communicator today would be go to a few people that you trust in your professional and in your personal life and say, I'm reading this book or I've listened to this podcast, and the the guest challenged us to try this exercise. I call it the feedback challenge. And you go to people and say, would you please let me know sometime this week something you like about communicating with me, and then something you think I could sometimes do better. So you're fishing, right? You're fishing for a compliment and you're fishing for some constructive criticism. Ideally, this person will be able to see you clearly enough to give you a piece of praise and a piece of criticism. And then your job is, as anyone responds to you in text or voicemail or in person or by email, your job is to say, thank you so much. I'm going to think about that. And that is it. That is the script. Thank you. I'm going to really think about this. So you don't defend, you don't disagree, and you don't explain, or you don't offer a compliment back even. Be a researcher, get the data. And I'd recommend, I like to see people go to a dozen folks to ask, because then you might get six responses. And wow, is it eye opening at this point in your life? What are people seeing as your communication strengths and weaknesses? And then you can do what you want with that data. You don't have to change anything, or you might want to change a few things, and it's not anonymous. And the great thing about data that's not anonymous is if somebody says to you, well, I think you're a really good public speaker, and I always like the information you bring to meetings, but I wish you emailed me back sooner. It
Mm.
seemed to take you a long time to email me back. Now, when I'm dealing with that person, I can remember what was important to them and perhaps take a few baby steps towards excellence in communication with them. And perhaps the scariest people to ask are your family, but they will perhaps be the most honest and forthright with you. And I think you deserve to pat yourself on the back when you're willing to invite constructive criticism like that. And the praise just feels great. So I do this regularly, and I've had clients around the US that don't know each other say some really nice things about my communication. But what really got my attention is when folks in five different states all said in their own way that I could listen better, especially when I disagree. And
Mm.
that really brought it home to me because they didn't collude about this. They weren't they're not in cahoots talking about what should we tell Michelle. So for the last about 10 years, I would say one of my most serious and heartfelt goals as a communicator is to listen better, especially when I disagree, because it's easy to listen to people when you agree with them. It's when you're disappointed or offended or angry or hangry, just in a bad mood and hungry or whatever that is, to really hear people out. So I know I'm growing up. I'm growing up. I'm growing as a human when I invite constructive criticism and then take baby steps to act on it.
Michelle, this has just been such a great conversation. I note the time. I need to let you go and get on with your busy day. But before we
Okay.
wrap things up, I just
Okay.
wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and where they can find your book, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Okay. Book is available happily everywhere books are sold. And I am available if anyone would like to speak with me. My cell phone number is 260-450-4202. My team of 7 is based out of Midwest, headquartered in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Northeast Indiana, but we go all around the nation doing training and we do a lot of coaching online as well. I write a quarterly newsletter called Breakdown. It's named after one of my favorite Tom Petty songs. Tom Petty, the great rock and roller, is a communicator I look up to, have always looked up to. So I write that quarterly, and there's always a music video. It's a fun kind of uplifting newsletter to receive, and folks can sign up for that and also just see a slew of free development tools, growth tools at gladioconsulting.com, and that's glad, IEUX, consulting.com. Gosh, final word on the topic. That's a tough question. You are going to be grateful to yourself if you are willing to take a hard look at what you can do better as a communicator. At the same time, you celebrate what you're already doing well. Please remember there's much more that you can do to influence most situations than you might realize. 50% of the effort can still make a big difference. So I hope that people will check out the book and enjoy checking out those pro moves.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Michelle can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.